We're live, Chair.
Thank you very much, Jim. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Council tonight, the 22nd of April. First of all, we're going to have a minute's silence, please, in memory of His late Royal Highness, the Duke of Edinburgh. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just going to invite the four leaders, if they wish, to make a few remarks about the late Duke of Edinburgh. I'll go to Councillor Purdy first.
Thank you, Chair. The passing of Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, has left a huge void with the Queen and her family, this country and the world at large. His contribution as the Queen's consort and to public duty, which spanned more than 7 decades, can only be described as Herculean. And yet, when asked how he did it, he modestly replied, "I simply did my best." He touched the lives of many, especially the young, with the Duke of Edinburgh Award Scheme. I doubt if this country will ever see the likes of him again, and it is all the more sad being so close to the Queen's 95th birthday. On behalf of this authority, I send our very best wishes and prayers to Her Majesty the Queen, her family at this desperately sad time in her life. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Flitzer.
Thank you, Chair. Well, there's not a lot that can be said that hasn't been said this week by many, and I know that it's no longer fashionable to be a royalist, but having been lucky, I consider myself being very lucky whilst being on this council and through my working life to have met so many members of the royal family. He was a devoted husband and father, but he also showed great support for our Queen in her role as our monarch. What he gave to this country, the Union, the Commonwealth and the world over were simply immense. Sometimes plain speaking, sometimes a critic, sometimes a sense of humour, but he had the ability of putting you at ease when you were in conversation. To me, it was about his ability to inspire the younger generation to showing a sense of duty, adventure, pride in our community, and a sense of belonging. His Royal Highness will be a great loss. I hope he rests easy because he was an inspiration to all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Ratcliffe.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I hope I don't shock people by saying I am not a monarchist by any means, but I do concur with the comments that my colleagues have made. For me, the one outstanding achievement of the late Duke of Edinburgh was his investment in young people and the great success of the award scheme. That did a huge amount to transform the lives of young people, particularly in the inner city areas. And I think he thoroughly deserves every credit for that scheme. I say I've not a great deal to say because my political leanings have never been towards the royal family as such. However, I do respect him as a man, as a person, and someone who contributed to the society in this country that we hold dear. So I go along with everything that my previous colleagues, Councillor Purdy and Flitter, have made this evening.
Thank you. And Councillor Buttle.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, Councillor Purdy, Councillor Flitter and Councillor Ratcliffe have pretty much covered everything that I had got ready. So I guess I'll just offer my my condolences and my sorrow for the loss that the Queen is suffering. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, we can now move on to the roll call. I know Councillor Statham is having trouble signing on, so I don't know if anyone behind the scenes might be able to assist him, or anyone might like to text him the numbers again, perhaps, just to see if he can get on. But anyway, we'll go for the roll call, and hopefully he'll be there. I think his iPad was updating at one moment. James, for the roll call, please.
Thank you, Chair. Beginning with Councillor Allison.
Here.
Councillor Archer.
Here.
Councillor Atkin.
Here.
Councillor Bright. Councillor Buckler.
Here.
Councillor Bull.
Here.
Councillor Martin Burfoot.
Here.
Councillor Sue Burfoot.
Here.
Councillor Buttle.
Here.
Councillor Chapman.
Here.
Councillor Cruz.
Here.
Councillor Donnelly.
Here.
Councillor Elliott.
Here.
Councillor Fitzherbert.
Here.
Councillor Flitter.
Here.
Councillor Froggatt.
Here.
Councillor Finesse.
Here.
Councillor Gamble.
Here.
Councillor Hill.
Here.
Councillor Hobson.
Here.
Councillor Hughes.
Here. Here.
Councillor Lees.
Here.
Councillor Tony Morley.
Here.
Councillor Michelle Morley.
Here.
Councillor O'Brien.
Here.
Councillor Purdy.
Here.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
Here.
Councillor Raw. No. Councillor Rose. No,
Is he on the screen? I can't see him. Anyone?
no, I don't see him, Chair. I'll move to
Okay.
Councillor Salt.
Here.
Councillor Shirley.
Here.
Councillor Slack.
Here.
Councillor Statham. On his way. Okay, we'll go to Councillor Sutton.
Here.
Councillor Swindell.
Here.
Councillor Wayne.
Here.
And Councillor Wakeman.
Here.
Thank you.
Right. Okay, so we haven't got Councillors Bright, Raw, Rose and Statham at present, but Andrew is trying to log on, I think. This is the ball with these meetings, is it not? Okay, well, it's when we get to the main part, we'll ask him again when we get to item number 10. Okay, thank you very much. Public participation, is there any?
No, Chair, there isn't any public participation this evening.
There is none. Moving on to item 4, interest. No members have noted any. Councillor Wayne.
Yes, Chair. I'd like to identify a non-pecuniary personal interest at point 10 in relation to the economic recovery plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Thank you. Approval of the minutes of previous meetings on the 18th of March. Can I have a mover for that, please?
Move, Chair.
Councillor Wakeman, a seconder. Councillor Sutton. All those in favour, show of hands will be sufficient. Thank you very much. That's approved. Item 6, leaders' announcements, please. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, on the same day as Prince Philip passed away, Friday 9th of April, Paul and I attended the family invitation and represented the authority at the funeral of former Councillor Joyce Pawley. It was a very moving ceremony filled with love and devotion by her husband Chris, family and the children, who very bravely told the story of Joyce's life and which revealed what a remarkable lady she was. In a way, the story of Joyce's life reveals that we never really know anyone until they pass away, not unless they're in the family or friends. We see each other in a work situation, albeit not in the pandemic, of course, but we are too soon to make unqualified judgments on people. I think the best testament I can give to Joyce is to read the poem that she wrote for her own funeral. She actually wrote and prepared her own funeral, which she narrators, as she called them, her husband and family, read out. So this is Joyce's poem she wrote, and that's from the service. In the furthest reaches, in the drifts and fells and beaches of the deepest recesses in my mind, hides a none such place quite undefined, a cloister created quiet and cool. Outside the shift of living, striving, or waiting for the final shriving, dwell meadows, uplands, crimson lit, shallow seas curling round a lonely spit. Given life by gentle inhalation, a sigh, a breath, sign of creation. Silently intent, I glance within a while to greet for moments with the softest smile. Peace. Turning to council business, you will note from the agenda papers that all local authorities in the country have had to make important decisions as to how we conduct business, given the fact that legislation to conduct virtual meetings expires on 6th of May. And a recent group leaders meeting, it was agreed that we would go with the most sensible and pragmatic solution, and that was to allow officers to make delegated decisions, but with liaison with affected ward members and group leaders. The situation will be monitored very closely. We've still not heard yet the appeal that was made at the High Court yesterday, and that will influence our progress in the future. If that appeal is successful, then we presume that virtual meetings will be allowed to continue. Interestingly, we're told 2 weeks last Friday that the appeal is actually being supported by the Secretary of State, the Right Honourable Regeneration MP, and his office. The recent announcement of a number of grants from government, especially the Levelling Up Fund and the Community Revival Fund, provide the opportunity to do more for our district. After complaining on at least 2 occasions this past year to the Secretary of State, Robert Jenrick, on DCN meetings, that rural areas always seem to miss out on government funding, I'm delighted that at long last government have recognised the importance of our rural areas by designating Derbyshire Dales as priority 1. However, the deadline of 21st of June, by which time the Levelling Up Fund bid has to be submitted, is more than extremely tight. And with a lack of officer capacity, we have little choice but to work towards submitting a bid in the second round for the second tranche of monies, which we know, we're assured, will come. Presentation for improvements in Ashbourne to Paul and myself a few weeks ago was commendable. Evidently, a lot of work has been put into that plan. However, I had to inform Ashbourne Town Team that would be wholly wrong for this council to support only one of our market towns. I have advised accordingly that they apply for the Community Revival Fund, and they are following that route. It has been decided, therefore, as you'll see from item 10 on your agenda papers, that we're going to aim for a second tranche of Levelling Up Fund monies, but to cover our 4 market towns, which we think is only fair. And this has to be put to Green Book standard. If I may give you an example, it took our officers over 12 months to get Ashbourne Airfield to Green Book standard. So that's why we're saying 21st of June is out of the question. So I think the authority needs to give serious consideration that if we want to witness improvements in our market towns and in Derbyshire Dales by securing government monies, that we have to give support for any planned expansion on the business team and indeed in any other really stretched department. I encourage members, therefore, especially in Matlock, Bakewell and Wirksworth, to give serious consideration as to what schemes they would wish to see come forward and allow us to be in a position as an authority to submit a bid to government for the second round of the Levelling Up Fund, and which has to be backed by our MP Sarah Dines in order to achieve a high degree of success. Naturally, we will liaise with our colleagues in Derbyshire County Council, the Peak District National Park Authority, the respective town councils, Ashbourne Town Team and parish councils as necessary. This is a golden opportunity for the authority and the Derbyshire Dales, and therefore we need to put all our energies into this task. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Item 7, Chairman's announcements. Councillor Froggatt. Helen, did you want to say anything? No, nothing to say. Okay, thank you.
No, sorry.
Thank you very much. Then item 8, committees. I so move the non-exempt minutes. Can I find a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Hill. All those in favour, please show of hands will be sufficient. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. And then we move on to, can I just check that Councillor Statham has arrived? Andrew, have you arrived?
He has, Chair.
Thank you. And I think Councillor Roar is on the way. So, right, so we're up to 43 on the board. Thank you very much. So item 8 is passed. Item 9, the questions, we have 4 tonight, and they're going to be put up on your screen for you by Jim. And the first one is from Councillor Butler to Councillor Jason Atkin, Chairman of the Planning Committee. There they are on the screen for you. I'll ask Councillor Atkin to respond to the question.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for your question. In providing the answer, I must remind members that the policies in the local plan often do not provide simple yes-no choices, but are issues to be weighed in the overall planning balance. Nevertheless, the answer to the question is that over the last 4 years, the Planning Committee has voted to approve applications against officers' recommendations of council officers on 12 occasions. On all of these occasions, the recommendations of officers have been based on their interpretation of the policies contained with the local plan. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. So, Councillor Buckler, you have a right to a supplementary. Councillor Buckler.
Yes. Can you say what percentage of those were for affordable homes?
I will have to get that to you in a written response.
Okay, thank you very much. And the second question is question B from Councillor Buckler again. If this were time to Councillor Purdy, supporting action on climate and biodiversity. Councillor Purdy, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your question, Councillor Buckler. As Councillor Buckler is aware, the Environment Bill, which will set out the statutory basis for taking forward biodiversity net gain, is progressing through Parliament. Whilst there is no indication of when the Environment Bill will receive royal assent or come into force, a consultation on the detail of the secondary legislation for biodiversity net gain is expected perhaps this year. The Derbyshire Dales has a significant amount of biodiversity interest. As such, the impact of any new statutory, statutory biodiversity net gain requirements for the District Council could be fairly substantial. Councillor Buckler is also aware that in exercising our planning function, the District Council does not have any resources or expertise in this field. We currently rely on a service level agreement with the Derbyshire Wildlife Trust, advice from Natural England, and advice from the ecology team at Derbyshire County Council to provide advice upon development proposals where there may be any impact on biodiversity. Derbyshire County Council are in the process of commissioning consultants to prepare a natural capital strategy for Derbyshire. This is obviously an important step in providing evidence to support biodiversity net gain, and one that I welcome. However, all local planning authorities in Derbyshire are starting to gear up for what could be complex requirements in relation to biodiversity net gain. Therefore, District Council officers have also pressed County Council officers who have existing expertise on what arrangements they might put in place to support District Councils. County Council officers have agreed to provide an update in due course. Finally, the Council also has a biodiversity working group, which is made up of officers and member representatives from each political party, including Councillor Buckler. This year, the group are focusing their efforts on verges, parks and open spaces with the aim of reviewing current mowing and cutting practices and schedule in an attempt to restore nature habitat and increase the level of biodiversity across the district. An update on this work will be presented to members later this year.
Okay, Councillor Butler, have you got supplementary?
Yes, thanks very much for the very thorough response. I welcome the work that this council has done on biodiversity, and would like to ensure that to find out how we will ensure that it's being included in other activities, such as conditions and enforcement in planning cases, the local plan review, economic strategy, and the clean and green review.
Thank you. I'm sure that will come from the working group, Councillor Buckler, but I'm happy to listen to you in the next few days if you wish to elaborate on that more. I do see it as a golden thread running through the planning system now, because biodiversity is very much on the roadmap.
Okay, thank you very much. So question C is from Councillor Campbell, and that's going to come up on your screen now. It's in 3 parts. So Councillor Purdy.
Chair, I think there's another question from Councillor.
Hold on. Where have I got
Buckler on?
Oh, sorry. Hold on.
On Enthoven's issue.
Right. Okay. Sorry. Let's go to that one. Sorry, I'm running ahead of it. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you again for your question. This question relates to a relatively complex system of regulations. The operations at Enthoven's are mainly regulated through an environmental permit issued under the Environmental Permitting (brackets on) England and Wales (brackets off) Regulations 2016 by the Environment Agency. The permit is published on the .gov website. As such, the Environment Agency are the main environmental regulator for the site. The District Council's involvement comes in 2 ways. When planning applications are received, they are considered by the Council, and as part of the decision-making process, the Environment Agency is consulted. Also, occasionally, complaints are received that fall outside the control of the environmental permit and become the responsibility of the Council's environmental health team. An example would be an issue that is not connected to the regulated process, such as complaints of nuisance or light. In those cases, our team would investigate and liaise with the Environment Agency as necessary. However, it is important to stress that the main environmental regulator for this site is the Environment Agency.
Right, Councillor Buckler.
Thanks again. In the light of the recent inquiry by the Planning Inspectorate, what communications are in place between ourselves, the Environment Agency and the County Council to ensure a full awareness of the combined impacts of planning, highways and environmental health on the communities you mentioned?
I don't know at this stage, Councillor Buckler. I'll get a written response for you.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully, I think that concludes Councillor Buckler's questions. Right, okay, so the next one is from Councillor Gamble, and the first question is from Councillor Gamble. Councillor Purdy, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your question. I don't accept the premise of your question. If you look at the changes to decision making that were agreed last July, with more business coming through council meetings to give more members the opportunity to comment on and debate the matters before us, then the system shows that we are far more open to debate on important issues at council than ever, and perhaps more so than many other local authorities in the country. Whilst I don't accept the premise of the question, a person who might accept the premise of it would only have to look at the length of council and committee meetings to see that debate isn't being stifled. Meetings regularly go on beyond 2.5 hours, and a reasonable person looking at that would possibly conclude that more debate is taking place now than ever before. Debate is not a bad thing, and it is welcome.
Councillor Gamble. Councillor Gamble, you have a right to a supplementary.
Okay, thank you for that. Yes, it is good that people are, we are spending time debating, but my question really is, when are we going to stop getting comments like that? If anyone questions anything, or if anyone asks a question or asks an office to explain anything, we get a diatribe of somehow we're undermining officers and don't trust officers and just put your place in trusting officers. What I'd like to know, when is that going to stop?
Councillor Purdy.
I disagree entirely. What we're trying to do is protect our officers who'll get many, many questions before the committee meeting and some questions repeated on the night. That's not fair to the officers because they're at work from 8 to 9 o'clock in the morning and still there to 10 o'clock at night.
Okay, thank you. So we now have the second question, which will come up on the screen, I hope, from Councillor Gamble. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. I don't consider that there has been a critical breakdown in any relationship between the members and officers of this council. The comments that I have made in meetings over the last 12 months were largely echoed by members of all groups of this council when we recognise the extra efforts that officers have gone to in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. Our officers are our best asset, and we should continue to support them and not burden them with additional demands for unnecessarily detailed information, which is why I have regularly reminded members of the need to be mindful of the kind of requests for information that have been submitted during the pandemic.
Thank you. Councillor Gamble, you have a supplementary.
Right. Thank you for that answer. I'd be just very interested to know then, because one of the instances that sort of prompted me to ask this question was the diatribe that followed Councillor Wayne when he asked why it taken 3 years to get air quality monitoring data. Why is that an overly detailed question? That to me seems quite a broad spectrum request for information. And also, can I ask, why do you think the officers need protection from members? I mean, what do you think we're going to do to them?
Councillor
My point, Councillor Gamble, is that if let's say 16 questions are asked of an officer before the meeting and the same questions are asked on the night, do you think that officer needs protection because it's over laborious? That's my point.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't think
you ever said a member.
Councillor Gamble, sorry, Councillor Gamble, excuse me, but you've got another question now, and Councillor Purdy's answered your supplementary, I think. So the third question is about to come up on the screen. And again, that's from Councillor Gamble. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Let us be clear on why we sit here as a council. We are a decision-making body. Collectively, we make decisions that impact on the residents of this district. When we come to meetings, it is expected that every member will have fully read the papers prepared by officers to participate in a debate. Papers are published 5 working days before the meeting to give us the opportunity to ask questions before we come to the meeting, in order that we can debate and represent our residents. Meetings of the council are not scrutiny committees. Watch council meetings at any other authority and you will see the difference. The council employs professional officers to advise and assist us in our decision-making responsibilities. They are the professionals, not members, and we should respect their professional advice, although we may not always agree with it. Turning to your question, good governance arrangements in local authorities ensure that there is a balance between decision-making and accountability. Officers submit proposals to the council and its committees. Members consider those proposals and may seek further information or clarification through questions to officers. That is entirely appropriate, but requests should be reasonable and proportionate. Officers serve the whole council, not a part of it, and will answer queries from members according to the rules of the Constitution. That has now been up for debate.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gamble, do you have a supplementary now?
Yes, in that case then, if you say, I think, thank you for that, you say that all members are entitled to question officers, then can a question ask you why you seem to see yourself the arbiter of that when you go weighing in? And can I ask you again, since you didn't ask last time, why do you believe officers need members' protection? Councillor Purdy.
As the leader of the council, I have a responsibility to look after everyone. My concern for the officers is that I've known these officers since 2007 and have a high respect and regard for them. And I feel that when they've answered a lot of questions before council meetings and the same questions are repeated, I believe sincerely that it's onerous, unnecessary, and it's not constructive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to the next question, please, which will come up on the screen from Councillor Wayne. And this is to do with reduced mobility, accessibility for drivers with reduced mobility when using payment machines on Derbyshire Dales car parks. Hold on. There it is, right. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Wayne. The council has been keen to upgrade the payment system for its car parks, and a text/mobile payment service is deemed the most suitable upgrade at this time. It hasn't been possible to introduce this previously, as the handheld devices used by the parking enforcement officers does not have the compatibility to allow for this. As members are aware, the contract for parking enforcement is managed by the County Council, and it is worth noting that this contract is due for renewal in August this year. The introduction of better technology will form as part of the new contract, which will not only improve accessibility, but also tackle of the fluctuating signal strength issues some areas within the Derbyshire Dales have experienced. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wayne, your supplementary.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Purdy, thank you for the response. You said that it's likely to be reconsidered in August. I'm at to take it that it will be operative from August, because my concern is that the nature of some impairment of mobility is such that people have gross dexterity skills that enable them to drive a car, but they don't have the more finer dexterity skills that enable them to insert coins or retrieve a ticket. It's a real problem, and the severity hampers their ability to be fully independent. Can you please assure me that the procurement exercise that precludes hopefully the implementation in August will be a broad assessment of people with differing degrees of reduction in mobility to ensure as wider inclusion as property, please? Thank you.
I certainly agree with that, Councillor Wayne, absolutely. I can't say that we will be operative from August, but I will find out from our officers what that situation is, and I'll respond to you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That concludes the questions then, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. I just want to check that apart from Councillor Statham, nobody else has joined the meeting, because obviously we've got to get our numbers right for voting at the end of the following item. So moving on to item 10, the Derbyshire Dales Economic Recovery Plan. Steve Capes, please.
Chairman, thank you very much, and good evening, members. This is a good news item, and that's very positive for the Derbyshire Dales, but there are a few updates that I need to appraise you of this evening. We've got 4 potential funding sources, which I've outlined in this report to you, and they've all got the potential to benefit the Derbyshire Dales. But they're all viewed in the context of our economic recovery plan, which you approved last November, and which is summarised in section 1 of the report. The business grants is the first item of funding I'm going to turn to, and that's detailed in part 3 of the report. I can tell you as an update that today we've paid out £30.6 million worth of business grants since November. That's 9,337 individual grant payments. 9 billion of this are the restart grants, the grants for reopening the economy, which we only actually received that money 2 weeks ago. So I think you will hopefully appreciate that that's a tremendous effort by staff across the whole council. As members are well aware, there's employees from a whole range of different sections which are pulled together as a single team to pay out the business grants, and they've done an incredibly good job. Turning to paragraph 3.4, we have now received information on further additional restrictions grant allocation. That's the discretionary grant allocation that we have. And so, members, we have an existing additional restrictions grant allocation of 2.1 million, of which we've spent 1.7 million already. If we spend all the remainder of that by the 30th of June this year, we are eligible to receive a further £817,193 of additional restrictions grant, which we can then use for business support up till March 2022. It is therefore our intention, and I should be surprised if members think otherwise, but I'm welcome to opinions, that we do make every effort to expend that remaining additional restrictions grant that we have got, the remaining 0.4 million, in order to get the additional 0.8 million that we can then have to spend on business support on the year to March 2022. The second fund that's detailed in the report, Chairman, is the Levelling Up Fund. This is a major new capital infrastructure fund, And as Councillor Purdy mentioned in his introduction, the Derbyshire Dales has actually got priority 1 status for this fund. It's the first time for many years we've had status for a fund, and that is very much welcome. There are expected to be at least 3 rounds of funding for the Levelling Up Fund, and the first one closes merely 8 weeks from now. That is very specifically intended for shovel-ready bids, i.e. bids that are already, as of now, ready to start on the ground. They're just lacking the funding. Members will know from my report in November that we don't have any shovel-ready bids in the Derbyshire Dales at the moment. So that's why we're recommending that we bid to round 2 rather than round 1. It's also worth noting that the council will get 1 bid only. There's only one bid. So if we were to bid in round 2, for instance, and not include everything we wanted, we would never have an opportunity to come back to the Levelling Up Fund. So it's a very key point that our bid should be a comprehensive package covering our market towns, and that's detailed, or some ideas of that at this stage is all it is, detailed in paragraph 4.11. Just to mention as well, Chairman, that the bid will take time and resources, and although capacity building fund from the government of 125,000 is expected, we don't know when yet, and therefore we do ask in the report that we are prepared to meet the costs from our own resources if need be. For information, Chairman, probably 2, maybe 3 of the 8 Derbyshire districts are likely to bid for round 1. The rest are not. They will also be waiting for round 2.
Okay.
The Community Renewal Fund is the other one, and that's a revenue fund that anyone can bid to. Again, Derbyshire Dales is priority 1. This time, however, the deadline is the 10th of May to bid to the County Council, who are the first point of contact for sifting the bids. The short time scale in this case, again, means that it's existing projects rather than entirely new initiatives that are likely to get funding. So in that regard, we are having discussions with the East Midlands Chamber, with the University of Derby, and with Marketing Peak District in Derbyshire, and we hope to be able to recommend supporting bids from them that will include some of the issues such as digital advice and town centre retail support, which are priorities for us. As a district council, we are going to make 1 bid to the Community Renewal Fund, Chairman, with members' permission, and that is a new LEADER bid. LEADER, as many members will recall, is a small grant scheme that's managed locally. Previously, it was EU funded up until last year. It's now obviously ceased, so our proposal is to use community renewal funding to pilot a new LEADER style business grant support funding for the Derbyshire Dales and High Peak. It will be a Peak District bid, and we're in discussion with High Peak Borough Council and Derbyshire County Council on that at the moment. As you can appreciate, it's fast moving, members. The final grant is the Welcome Back Fund, much smaller fund. It largely repeats the reopening high streets funding allocation we had last year. And again, discussions are already going on with various partners, including town and parish councils. And at the moment, the proposal to spend Welcome Back funding is looking like an amount to Marketing Peak District and Derbyshire for them to do a campaign to extend the tourism and visitor season after the summer to include the autumn and possibly winter period as well. For some work from the district council to coincide with that, to hopefully get some fun runs in each of our 4 main towns, again in the autumn period, in order to bring visitors into the Derbyshire Dales after the peak summer season to try and make up for the loss of the Easter season to an extent. A certain amount for outdoor seating, which we or other partners may be able to put on their own land, and possibly some pop-up cinemas. There's interest from at least one town, and our community development team is willing to work with them to put pop-up cinemas up in our towns, in some of our parks, this summer. The remainder, Chair, we would again spend with the towns and villages, the parish and town councils that we engaged with for the reopening high street funding. That would be approximately £6,000 each to each of those, and those discussions are already ongoing. I think I've said enough, Chair. I'm happy to ask questions.
Right, thank you very much. As you mentioned, Marketing Peak District in Derbyshire, I should declare an interest that I'm now the new chair of that august body, but I have a non-pecuniary interest. Right, I've got a number of people who want to speak. I think Councillor Anderson's having problems with her her hand raising, but I've got you on the list, don't worry. I've got several other people on the list, but I'm going to go to Councillor Bull first.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is more of a comment rather than a question, so I don't know whether you want me to come back later.
No, make a comment. Carry on. We've got
Okay.
so many people who want to talk.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. Well, firstly, as our leader did say at the beginning, but obviously, I'd like to thank Steve and all the team within the district officers and on the regeneration side, because I do know that that is something that we have, since I've been on the district council, have worked very terribly hard to make sure that we move forward and we do keep Derbyshire Dales in the loop with what's going on and progressing and showing that we have got the capacity to do it. We have worked tirelessly. The government have shoved all these funds and grants over and for the public and the businesses of our local areas to gain, but it's been our officers and staff that have had to put together the criteria and how it's been dispersed and the likes. So full commendation for that. The other thing is, this is great in the fact that, you know, the government announced all these grants and the likes for in March. But as we all know, we've all been sat round doing nothing for nearly a year. And so I'm very surprised if anybody will actually have a shovel ready to do any major developments to take up these funds. And I mean, you know, to be actually thinking you're going to put in a very secure bid, especially having to have it as a green book status, which is going to take a lot to come up with these days. Yeah, I'm in full support of what Steve has presented to us to state that we should not be looking to go for the first round. We should get together with all our communities, all of the districts, the town councils and the areas that we want to work with, and put a very solid and robust collection together to put this bid and hopefully to be able to get something out of the second trench of this. As regards the other, the towns and the likes with the communities, I do stress that I feel that you should all, as best you can, any groups that have got any ideas of improving on bettering your community, with even on the green structure as well as anything else, is beneficial. And I do commend that you actually do try and apply on the community funding. All that said, I would like to offer to propose the full recommendations that is set before us. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Purdy, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as I said in my leader's announcement, this is a golden opportunity now for this authority. We've been given status 1. And over the austerity years, we've lost no amount of rural funding. Councillor Ratcliffe and Flitter will know what funds we have lost over the years. So we've got a gateway opportunity now, and we're starting a journey, which I think is going to be very exciting. For Matlock, I think about Matlock Vision, for example, you know, we've looked at their excellent presentations over the years. All that now needs to be pulled together with the respective towns. So I'm more than happy to second it, Chair.
Councillor Hughes, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions and then just a comment. First of all, Steve, do any of these grants allow work to be done? Oh, before I go on, I ought to declare a non-pecuniary interest as a town councillor for Matlock.
Thank you.
Do any of these grants allow public sector buildings to be modified, for example, to reduce heat loss and insulate the buildings in association with climate change?
Steve?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Hughes. it's mentioned in the report, but I didn't bring it out in my introduction. I'm sorry, but green and carbon reduction is a theme that does run through. Well, certainly the Levelling Up Fund and the Community Renewal Fund, and certainly in terms of public sector buildings, they are eligible. And in terms of the sorts of renewal and regeneration that would be engaged in that, doing them to standards that reduce carbon emissions would I'm sure be something that every bidder would be intending to do.
Okay, thank you very much. Just one comment then. I noticed on that there were comments on the previous fund in paragraph 3.11 about Matlock, Bath and Hathersage providing good input into proposals for spending the reopening the High Street Fund. I'd just like to remind Steve really that Matlock Town Council did not put in any proposals because we felt that the money was better spent in other places. The pavements, the money was generally available for signage and for modifications to pavements, widening pavements by putting cones in the road and so on. And we felt that the Matlock Town Council felt that this was not a problem in Matlock because the town centre pavements are quite wide and the number of pedestrians were relatively low, so the density of pedestrians was low. And we felt that given Ashbourne's real requirement, we felt it was better not for Matlock not to take as much money and not to allow Ashbourne the funding for Ashbourne to be taken out of this fund. So I think it wasn't that we didn't want to do anything. We felt it wasn't good value for money for us to do anything, and therefore, and we felt it was better value for money for other market towns to take the funding. Thank you very much. That's all.
Okay, Councillor Ratcliffe, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I say first of all that I concur and support everything that Councillor Sue Bull has said in proposing that we accept these recommendations. I think Steve has prepared a really excellent report for us, and I congratulate him too for the work he's doing to try and capture these funds. I mean, my word, if we are successful and receiving this money, it will enliven this council no end. You know, we need this money, and knowing the sort of council that we have, I'm absolutely assured, and I know that we'll put it to good use. I want to ask a couple of questions, if I may. I think one is probably to Steve and the other is to perhaps Karen, since it's about finance. Incidentally, I'm asking these questions because I suppose I'm referring back to the previous discussions about member officer questions. Sometimes I feel that it's worth asking questions in full council because it publicly airs information that I think is often useful and may add to the debate for all members. Right, my first question then, Steve, to you, refers to paragraph 4.23. About the sort of ownership of this particular fund by the county council. Can you assure me, first of all, that our council will make sure that what has been outlined in that paragraph actually takes place? And in what sort of forums will you exert the pressure to see that Derbyshire Dales is fully recognised within the administration of this fund?
Steve?
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Ratcliffe. That is a good question. I can assure members that Derbyshire County Council is taking very seriously its role as if you like, custodian of the Community Renewal Funds for Derbyshire. and they are setting up a series of measures to ensure that bids are fully appraised. They intend to have an initial officer sifting to check that they meet the gateway criteria. They will then be contracting out to an external consultant to do the full appraisal. Then it will be we think a county council officer and member panel who make their final judgments themselves. We understand that the district councils won't be part of that panel, but nevertheless, we do meet with the county council weekly through economic development officers and indeed other meetings at other levels as well. And they're well aware of the priorities of the Derbyshire Dales, and they will be taking them into account. Indeed, as part of their bidding guidance to the Community Renewal Fund, they have set up a website on which they have linked to our own economic recovery strategy already. So bidders should be well aware of that. So it is a difficult task the County Council have been landed with, appraising these bids, but they are taking it seriously and they are determined to do it as well as they possibly can.
Right, thank you, Steve. And now to Karen, if I may, and I'm referring to paragraphs 4.5 and also just to begin with 4.13. Do we have any answer yet about whether the government will allow funding contribution from the value of land and property that we own?
Karen.
Karen?
Thank you. I've not heard of an answer, but I think Steve put the question to the government, so I don't know if he's had a response.
Is there a strong likelihood that this will take place? This is a sort of preamble to my next question to Karen.
Did you want? Oh, right, Steve.
Haven't had an answer yet, Chairman. Sorry, Councillor Ratcliffe.
Okay, right. Well, I'll proceed to my next question, which is paragraph 4.5. The £20 million bid is dependent on 10% match funding, £2 million, which presumably we have to either put up in some sort of collateral or whatever. Karen, can you just give me an outline? I don't want detail necessarily. Is this sum manageable from within our budgets? What sort of effect would this have on our reserve fund allocation?
Karen.
Well, at the moment, we don't have that amount of money available in our capital reserves.
Yeah. Okay.
That is why we've put the question to government as to whether we can take the value of land.
But
we would have the we would have the ability to borrow, but then that would, of course, require affordable and sustainable repayments. So our preference would be for the government to allow us to match it with the value of land that we're putting forward.
But I'm sorry to keep coming back on that, but do you have confidence that if the government didn't allow us that other form of match, that we could manage this sum? If we couldn't participate and try and at least get this money?
We would have to consider our options if the government come back and say no.
Okay, all right then. So it's something to be considered later. Thank you very much, Karen. Thank you.
I've just got to make a couple of announcements here. Councillor Rose will not be attending, and also Councillor Sue Burfoot has an interest of being a member of the Matlock Town Council, non-pecuniary. Right, I've got Councillor Fitter next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, also my declaration being a member of the Matlock Town Council, so I declare that that interest. Secondly, I just want to congratulate you on your new post, and I hope that you will act on behalf of Derbyshire Dales in every way you can. I want to say well done to Steve for a good report. It is factual, it is interesting, and it is, as been mentioned, it's an opportunity. The one thing that I think separates those comments from Councillor Purdy is now we've got that opportunity. It's up to the council and the officers to prove that we're up to the job. I'm sure they are, but now we've got this opportunity, we have to take it with both hands. Just a question in the recovery plan. You do refer to Corder Quarry, and it's intimated that that is supporting for manufacturing and housing. Many Matlock members feel that this is totally housing now, so I wonder whether things have changed over the past few months.
Steve.
On the Levelling Up Fund, on page, on item 4.12, it talks about developing these schemes to the Green Book standard, as you've explained. But what concerns me, what it follows on to say about the level of consultancy needed to make these bids up. And I'm wondering whether the cost of that consultancy is going to lessen our ability in the amount of funds that we get and how we control that. And on the UK Renewal Fund, I know we go through County Council for this, but I'm just wondering whether we see any difficulties there. So I don't want any watering down of bids that, or whether any new restrictions will be put on the District Council for placing those bids. And it goes on 4.24 and it talks about having to improve our quality and the quality of the offer in the Dales on tourism. And I'm just wondering how we can do that without raising costs, and how we need to attract people into the Dales on the services that the council control. And I'm particularly going back to the old adage of toilets and car parking. If we're going to attract these numbers of people into the Dales, whether they are short-term day visitors or the staycation, we need the facilities. And I'm just wondering how we're going to manage all that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
Chairman, thank you, and thank you for those questions, Councillor Flitter. The Corder Quarry development, first of all, it is mostly housing, but there is a hectare of employment land, which is one of the later phases that's still within the Corder Quarry development. So although it hasn't come yet, it is one of the later phases that is yet to come. With regard to the Levelling Up Fund, there is, he's quite right, a need for speciality consultants to help provide the bids. There's no way that we could have all the technical expertise in particular areas to do all that. But that's why the government is providing the £125,000 worth of capacity funding to help local authorities prepare bids for round 2 and onwards. And just to reflect Councillor Ratcliffe's point about match funding that Karen answered, the match funding doesn't all have to come from the District Council. For instance, if other partners in schemes for the Levelling Up Fund were parish councils or indeed the private sector, the funding that comes from them would count as match funding as well. So it wouldn't just be the District Council that we look for the match funding. With regard to UK Renewal Fund, Councillor Flitter, the difficulty I don't see as being the County Council. The difficulty is the fact that the money has to be bid for and spent within this financial year. So what will really restrict schemes is ones that are kind of up and running and ready to start spending in July, August, and have the spending done and have some measurable outputs by March. So I think that's going to be the main constraining factor, which is why, as I say, existing or recent schemes such as the Leader scheme, which are already proven and work in the area. There's already a local action group set up to manage the leader scheme, which the district council sits on. That's an ideal means of using the community renewal funding. And then on tourism, to the minds of the Marketing Peak District, it's not so much attracting visitors that's the issue, it's making them stay. And in that regard, the biggest facility is accommodation. Decent quality accommodation is perhaps what's needed more than anything else.
Okay, thank you very much. So moving on to Councillor Allison. I've got lots of people on my list, so don't worry, I've got you all on my list. Councillor Allison, I don't know where you are.
I'm here. Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask Steve a question about the prioritisation of the Derbyshire Dales into the Priority 1 category. I note that the report says that we were deemed as having the highest levels of identified need, and I just wanted to know, I might have missed it in the report, what was the criteria that was used to put us into that category? My reason for asking that is that if we know what that criteria is, could we not shape our bids to show the maximum impact on that? And wouldn't that give us more confidence that we might get approval? Thank you.
Chairman, thanks, Councillor Allison. The principles for categorisation of places are set out in great detail on the government's website, and so that's not included in the report, but it is on the government's website. I think the key point here is the fact that they've already done that for us means that any bid from or that's to do with supporting the Derbyshire Dales automatically gets higher ranking as part of the assessment process. So because it's from the Derbyshire Dales and because the government's already done that prioritisation, then it already gets, if you like, extra points because it's from the Derbyshire Dales, not necessarily from the district council, but from someone else wanting to support the Derbyshire Dales. So we're already, if you like, a few steps ahead of some other districts in that regard.
Okay, so that's available on a .gov website then, and gives the data that they've used to prioritise the Derbyshire Dales. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Wayne.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Mr. Capes for an informed and readable report. And I'd also like to thank for all those people that have gone over and above and enabled the people of the Derbyshire Dales to get these grants, which have been very well received. I have one question. Basically, it's at item 1.4, and it relates to Hulldale Quarry. And I just want some clarification, please, if I may. Going back to the February C&V Community Environment meeting, Hulldale Quarry, we were informed that Hulldale Quarry was on a stop, or it was on a delay, and the housing numbers within Hulldale Quarry weren't going to be factored into the monitoring report for the next 5-year schedule. Now, I see on this report at 1.4 that it's being classed as a top priority. How are we defining what is a top priority? What are the timescales, and why is there some disparity in relation to dwellings and commercial? Thank you.
Steve.
Chairman, the 6 sites that are listed there are those that are in the economic plan, so they're there for not in relation to housing specifically, but they're there in relation to workspace for employment land. They're the sites which are essentially got the largest allocations for employment land in the local plan, and that's why they are the priorities and have been in the economic plan since that was adopted in 2019.
If I could just come back, Chair, please.
Yep.
So I'm still confused because we're saying there's one rule for development of business, which is very, very important. I totally agree. And we're trying to get that through. But surely if the site is going to be developed, one would think that the housing is going to be developed, but we're not taking account of the housing numbers. Is that correct?
Chairman, as part of the development, housing is expected on all, well, almost all of the sites that are mentioned on that list, and so housing is very much accounted for. I think Councillor Wayne is more to deal with a question of when the housing is likely to come forward, and that's a different question as to when it can be counted in different housing calculations.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got Councillor Battle, then Martin Burford. Councillor Battle.
All right, thank you, Chair. Steve, absolutely fantastic. I really, in fact, it's really quite exciting, isn't it? I wasn't expecting to be able to spend any money, so this is a good start. The leader thing, that really does make sense, using the systems that we've already got to spend as much as we can as fast as possible. Excellent. We've got a similar sort of thing going on with council houses, haven't we, where we've got the beginnings of a policy to create our own housing, affordable housing. And I've been doing lots of leafleting the last few days. And one of the things I've noticed is how many holiday cottages we do actually have. So I'm wondering, could we use holiday cottages, call it Community Renewal and Regeneration, buy them and shove them into our council housing stock? And if we could do that, we could get through quite a lot of money quite quickly, which would be a good thing. And once we've got that, I can come up with about 1 million other ideas as well.
Sorry, Steve. Oh, sorry, could I just interrupt? Could I just ask James, what are the rules on commenting on the election? Just for clarification, James.
Thank you, Chair. So obviously there is an election taking place a fortnight today. Members, you're absolutely fine to talk about the fact that you've been leafleting. I don't believe Councillor Buttle actually referred to the fact who he was leafleting for. But the fact of the matter is you're all politicians and it's very likely that you are campaigning presently. So whilst I would ask you to refrain from making any overt remarks that might be supporting the campaign of any individual or party, I think in terms of what Councillor Buttle just said, there's no issue before I get any complaints further down the line. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your clarification. Steve, did you want to comment on that or not?
Well, only briefly, Chairman, to say that the Levelling Up Fund is mainly to be focused on towns, and therefore Councillor Buttle's intriguing idea to buy up holiday cottages might not be as relevant to that funding as he might hope.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Martin Burford, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to focus on 1.4 and 3.6. On 1.4, I think Steve Capes has largely answered the questions I was going to ask in reply to Councillor Wayne and Councillor Flitter. But going back to the three quarry sites, Middleton Row, or industrial sites, brownfield sites, I suppose. Middleton Row works with Corder Quarry and Halldale Quarry. Yes, I understand that Corder Quarry works there, the construction works have largely stalled now, and they're waiting for the next phase to be approved in detail. But I'm disappointed actually that the employment component is going to be so late in phasing, because that's at the Matlock end, and of course it's a one-sided, one-access development of it's going to be a very, very long cul-de-sac, and the entrance component is the employment component. So that means, of course, that when people have bought their properties, they'll be, every time they go home and leave in the morning, they're going to be faced with massive construction works at the entrance to the development. So that's unfortunate. But anyway, going back to considering all three sites, our office is constantly in dialogue with the owners and developers of these three sites to just keep up with progress, particularly on Halldale Quarry, I think, as Councillor Wayne mentioned, because obviously there's quite a significant employment component in on that site, and very little has been seen there since they erected security fencing a couple of years ago, I think it probably was. So when that proposal is going to be coming forward, and and some progress seen on that site in particular. Now going on to the 3.6, that's the Bakewell Road Regeneration Scheme, which I very much applaud the officers' efforts in progressing this scheme, and I hope that the revised proposals are an improvement and hope to address and hopefully address the concerns of ward members about the detailed design for the Bakewell Road frontage of this very, very important scheme. And that's obviously going to be hopefully a catalyst in terms of regenerating business and town centre business in Matlock. But the unfortunate thing is we've got to attract the visitors in order to boost local business in the town centre and for the benefit of traders. But unfortunately, the traveller encampment on the Derbyshire car park, which is ever extending, is a severe deterrent to visitors, I feel. In fact, it's been very much a criticism that we're getting on the doorstep at the moment during the county council election campaign. And in fact, quite a few people said that if they were visiting Matlock, there's no way that they would stop and park in the Derbyshire car park and come into Matlock to shop or to use any other facilities like the excellent Holy's Park. So I just underline that point and urge officers to take more steps or the ultimate steps really to ensure that the illegal campers on that site are evicted as soon as possible, so that the unsightly
okay. We'll ask Steve to answer your question.
Going back to the Bakewell Road, the Bakewell Road development, the other unfortunate thing is I think that because the development there has been stalled somewhat by the delay in submitting a planning application, I think we're going to get a lot of criticism as a council when people find that the fruit and veg business it closes down in a couple of weeks' time and the whole site is boarded up for several months, when I think they could have been given an extension well, certainly midsummer, because there's no way that any development work is going to start on that site for probably 3 or 4 months. So I think that's unfortunate. I don't know if Steve Capes can address that.
Okay, let's get if Steve can answer your question. I've still got another 6 people who want to speak, please. Okay, I don't want to get into too many specifics, please, tonight. Thank you. That's for another forum. Steve.
So I'll be brief, Chairman. Yes, officers do maintain dialogue with developers of sites, Halldale, Corder, etc. However, during the COVID pandemic, a number of developers have clearly slowed things down. Some of their staff have been on furlough, so there hasn't been much progress in the last year, as you might expect. With regard to the Bakewell Road site, the planning application is in preparation and will be coming to members in due course. And thanks are due to, in fact, Matlock Community Vision, the community group who are contributing very positively to that process, and their comments have helped improve the designs somewhat. No more details to give, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Butler, please.
Yes, thank you. Steve, do you have any concerns on the level of interest in round 2 of the various grants, as I assume that everyone will be in the same situation as us in terms of shovel-ready projects, and that the level of interest in the second round is likely to be significantly higher than in the first round?
Steve.
Chairman, I don't, because we've got priority 1 status, and that we understand is likely to persist throughout all rounds.
Thank you. Councillor Cruz.
Thank you very much, Chair. I also need to declare an interest. I'm part of Matlock Town Council as well as the councillor, so I just need to clarify that. Accept the recommendations and welcome them, and also wanted to reiterate the point that other members have made around the processing of all the grants and all the activity that the team have done. It really has kept our businesses alive. So big thanks to the staff and the team. Really, really excellent work. Thank you. I did want to make some comments, and then I've got a question. It's focused on Matlock, but there is a link to the wider Dales as well. We've got a very proactive retail community and small business community in Matlock, and they have been self-helping through the pandemic. So I think members and officers may be aware of the work that Dale Road Independents have been doing. The energy and enthusiasm coming from that part of the town, but also more widely across the town, is really quite inspiring in terms of some of the work that they've been doing to really connect with the community and the wider potential for shopping and retail people coming into the town. Also, the town council is looking to be very proactive in this area as well. So I think there's lots of energy and enthusiasm. I met with business owners from across the town on Monday night, and they're absolutely brimming with energy and ideas, which, frankly, given what they've been through, is pretty inspirational, and I really want to capitalise on that. So I think it's something that, particularly as it relates to 4.29, Welcome Back Fund, including the trialling of new ideas, particularly where they relate to the high street. So Matlock definitely want to participate in trialing new ideas and being creative. And then more broadly, in terms of the Dales, my question is there a way, or do you think we can come up with a way and work together on a way that we can sort of share ideas efficiently across our market towns so that we can build a sort of cohesive approach to building back and bouncing back across all the market towns, all this creative energy that's going to come out? How can we harness that and share the ideas? Any thoughts on that, Steve?
Steve.
Chairman, thank you, and thanks, Councillor Cruz, and thanks also for our discussion the other day about the Welcome Back Fund and your positive ideas for Matlock, which I very much hope we can take some of them forward. The only caveat being, as you've seen, it's a relatively small amount, but if it can help pump prime things for the future, then that's great. Sharing ideas across the towns is an excellent idea, and hopefully that's one thing that will come out of the Levelling Up Fund process. Because if there are good ideas that come out of, say, if for instance some of the elements of the Ashbourne bid might apply elsewhere, then it will be down to the district council to share that with the other towns to make sure they do. Public realm, for instance, is an issue that might be mentioned as an issue in one town, but actually it's probably an issue in all towns. So if there's some good ideas for public realm improvements, that's an obvious example of something that can be we can spread the goodness. But there'll be other examples that I don't know, haven't thought of, and what comes through that process. We're all ears and we're wanting to hear them. So yeah, I think there is an opportunity to where good ideas come up for them to be shared amongst all the districts as part of the bidding process.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Chair. I always enjoy reading Steve Cape's reports. I find them very interesting and thought-provoking. This one's no exception. So I've got a number of points I'd like to make. I do hope there will be continuing member involvement and engagement in this process, and that involvement won't solely be restricted to us having to consider reports with recommendations in it. So I hope there will be some thought will be given to how members are engaged in the process involving these various grant regimes over the next few months and year. Our next point is that I want to refer back to our recovery plan and the priority we gave in that to adding value to our employment base. And I have a little concern that that seems to have dropped out of the agenda to some extent in this report. For example, we now seem to be giving some priority to tourist-related activities, whereas we were informed previously, and I think back in November, that shouldn't be a priority because it didn't generate jobs of sufficient value. So I do think we need to bear in mind that, as we have agreed back in November, that we are looking at creating higher value jobs, not jobs per se. I think we need to be consistent there. Now, for me, and certainly in my part of the district, and I suspect in others within the National Park particularly, the biggest single issue holding back economic growth is the poor level of broadband connectivity and speed. And that's what our businesses want being addressed. They don't want advice on it. They want investment. That doesn't appear to feature in the ideas for the programme. And what I prefer not to hear is that's a matter for Digital Derbyshire, and it is outside the remit of the potential programme. So Digital Derbyshire is a dirty word in my part of the district. It is not a well thought of programme. So what I would ask is that if it's not oven ready, and I'm not sure that there isn't some aspects of Digital Derbyshire that aren't oven ready, I would ask that the the broadband issue is addressed as part of a key part of our levelling up scheme. I mean, to me, it may actually be even more important to get that addressed than some of our town centres. Moving on to regeneration of the town centres. Now, I appreciate that we like to be seen to be fair to all 4 market towns, but what I would like our officers to do is to really look carefully at each of the market towns and see whether there are one or more of them are more should be a higher priority for investment than spreading the jam rather more thinly. Now, I certainly know that Ashbourne, public realm is fine, but certainly when I look at Ashbourne and when I look at parts of Bakewell, there's some structural changes needed to the town centres rather than prettifying, if you know what I mean. And I do hope that some thought will be given to that. And if officers feel that priority should be given to one market town over another, then they will have the confidence to come forward and say that to us. On the regeneration of town centres, I do want to say something which I feel really strongly about, and that we need to have women engaged in that process, leading that process. There are far too many men employed in designing town centres, and we know, unfortunately, that women certainly do feel unsafe walking around many of our centres, certainly after dark, and that is often due to the fact that places have been designed by men. So I do hope that we will engage women at a high level in that process. I'm pleased to see that culture is featuring strongly in the themes. What I would say, we do actually have what I would call a Love and Ready project in Hathersage, which is shortly, the prospectus for that is shortly to be released, and that is to create a culture hub for a cultural hub for the whole of the Hope Valley. I do hope that officers will feel able to make contact with the group that is progressing that initiative. It's based on the old RBS Bank building in the centre of Hathersage. As I said, for the Hope.
Okay, have you got any more questions? Because I know we've still got some other speakers. And
yeah, I've got a couple of. It's an important report.
Right. Yeah, okay, well, Steve's got a lot to answer there. You know,
on the Community Renewal Fund, Councillor Finesse will know that we have an organisation called Hope Valley Climate Action, which straddles both the Derbyshire Dales and the High Peak Borough Council. And they have been in contact with them this week, and they do have a series of well-developed projects, and they will be pleased to meet with Steve and his team to discuss them. And finally, on the Welcome Back Fund, I would say that the four parishes in my patch have not had any contact with officers on that, and certainly their indication is that each of them would like to have the opportunity to discuss ideas with officers before they're taken forward to too far an advanced stage. Thank you for forbearance, Chair.
Okay, Steve, please.
Chairman, thank you. In terms of the visitor economy, members will note that the Welcome Back Fund is indeed geared towards that. That's 63,000. However, there's about 20 million or more that's geared towards the higher value structural changes. So I don't think the balance is wrong there. In terms of broadband, there is a gigabit voucher scheme that has been recently launched by the government, and that enables residents and businesses to apply for funding to support their broadband connections. However, Councillor O'Brien makes a good point about broadband being an issue, and that's something that we will consider as enough bids are developed. With regard to different towns, I take his point about prioritisation. All I would say is that different towns have different types of priorities, and so it might be different things that are prioritised in different towns. The Hope Valley schemes, as Steve mentioned, I would suggest they get in contact with the County Council as the authority for the for the Community Renewal Fund, and just to say that 3/4 of the economic development team are women. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gamble.
Hi, just a couple of short questions. On the Welcome Back Fund, I was, maybe it's me not being able to read this report properly, but I'm sort of looking at who are you actually looking to be actually applying for these? I'm thinking obviously a lot of people, members might be in areas like they've got, big organised like Town Council, whatever. But I suppose going back to Peter O'Brien, Councillor O'Brien, sorry, point, it's what happens in the villages and things, because obviously, they have needs, and with the way that the economy, when it's tourism economy is coming back, it's coming back outside, and there's needs that. And also, I'm just thinking when they're coming, will members that in the national park will be consulted on things like if you're going to do any action in Bakewell, because obviously that is a centre. People are staying in the villages and things, but a lot of them do a lot of their activity in Bakewell. So that does have a knock-on effect as to what you can do in there. Are you doing it? I'm trying to ask you, are you doing anything in Bakewell? Is anything happening there? And just on the other thing, on the 2 million that required, going back to Councillor Ratcliffe's point, how confident are you that we'll raise the 2 million? And I know earlier you mentioned the idea of private input into that. Have you had any positive commitments to that? And also, just interested in the idea, you mentioned parish councils as well. Have you got any parish council that are able to raise anything like 2 million? And have they made any commitments to that effect at all? And also, is there any possibility of doing anything through the LEPs to raise that 2 million? That was it, really.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Councillor Gamble. The Welcome Back Fund, as you'll see from the report, is a very small fund. It's only about 60,000, and I've sort of outlined the district council through and its other partners such as Marketing Peak District has got proposals for approximately half of that amount. That leaves about 35,000, which would be around 6,000 each for the 6 parish and town councils that members have already determined are the ones where visitor economy and safe reopening are key, and that's Ashbourne, Bakewell, Hathersage, Matlock, Bath and Wirksworth. I really do think that spreading it any further than 6,000 each for those 6 communities will be spreading it so thinly it will be worthless. Pleased to say that Bakewell have already put some proposals forward, and through Karen Henriksen, who's the director, who is the liaison point for Bakewell Town Council, they've been urged to work them up further. They were for signage and so on. And then for the Levelling Up Fund, it's very early days, Councillor Gamble. We haven't had specific interest or comment from anyone yet. That's the whole purpose of going for round 2, is to enable that to come forward. I don't expect a parish council would contribute 20 million. However, anything that they did contribute, if it were relevant to a specific scheme that had their support and interest, would clearly count towards the match funding total. But I think the point I was trying to make with regard to Councillor Ratcliffe is that match funding could come from a number of sources, which altogether would make up in total the 2 million.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry,
I think,
if
I may,
everyone else has had follow-ups. Could just have one follow-up. So I'm just thinking in some of the villages there might be some very, very small projects that would help things like the centres where things like pubs, the only trade they can have outside is for things like outside seating areas. Maybe, I think lots of it says it's aimed at temporary measures, things like outside marquees that help pubs and things. But obviously, on top of everything else that has gone through this year, that's a helpful small measure. Would they be able to apply for that?
Chairman, no, it's not on private land. It's not eligible for private land. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Steve, for a very informative report indeed. It's an excellent report and very good indeed. I just want to centre on the main development sites at Ordale, Corder, Ashburn, Airfield, Middleton Road, Worksworth, and the bigger sites which we are bidding for. The main thing partly will be housing, partly will be in business and industrial development, and maybe some for community. But looking in the future at these sites and we've got to look to the future now with carbon, trying to reduce those carbon input on this, reduce carbon right down. More jobs we create locally on these in these new sites, and housing at another part of the site, it'll coordinate more people reducing carbon. Instead of, same as in Worksworth area, many people travel to Derby to work, which obviously is they go in the cars and they're burning carbon. I think we've got to look to the future now of sites that we coordinate housing in one part of the site and some industrial development and business development in other parts of the site, and we can bring it all together so people do not have to travel so far. I think that's going to be the future of the country, really. So will there be money available for this sort of project, Steve?
Councillor Slack, yeah, that's exactly what the Levelling Up Fund is for, really. It recognises that those type of sites, our brownfield sites, the former quarries and others are difficult to develop. They do have abnormal costs which require remediation, and in order to sort of to pump prime that's precisely what the Levelling Up Fund is there to support. All I would say is they are private sector owned, so in order to move that forward, we need to have those negotiations with the private sector owners and developers.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve.
Okay, thank you very much. We've got Councillor Michelle Morley.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going back to Councillor Flitter's comments, it's a little while ago now, but going back to that, he did mention about how our visitors to the Dales going to be encouraged. I'd just like to confirm for members that both myself, Dr. Capes and Sir Richard are on the board of Marketing Peak District Derbyshire. And we have got our own roadmap and we have got our own plans for reintroducing visitors back to the area. But also just very briefly, one thing I'd like to say is that it's not just about the Peak District. We are talking about the Dales as well. A lot of emphasis is put on the Peak District, and whilst it's very valuable, pretty, etc., there's also other areas too, and that is being taken into consideration as far as Marketing Peak District is concerned. So rest assured, please, colleagues, we are doing our best to try to encourage visitors back. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Waitman, thank you.
Yes, Steve, I'd like to thank you and your team for an excellent report. I do understand if you want to send me this through separately, but is any of this money, could we use on our own stall market in Bakewell to bring that back to life after, you know, it's had such a bad time?
Steve?
My keyboard stopped working there for a moment. At early days, I'm not sure if I know the answer to that at the moment, Councillor Waitman, but as part of bids to regenerate towns, I think we'd have to look at any proposals that come forward in order to come up with a bid that helps the town, but is also a bid that forms a coherent package that sort of hits the buttons that the government wants it to hit. I suppose that goes back to Councillor Allison's point at the start. There's some projects will have better outputs, will score better than others, and we need to look at that in the round. I think the first stage is to get that long list together, get all proposals together from all sources, and then start to sift and work them up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I've got nobody else on my list. It's been moved and seconded, and I know some members need to leave now. So we'll go to the vote, please. James, please. It's been moved and seconded for approval.
Thank you, Chair. Beginning with Councillor Allison, please.
For.
Councillor Archer.
For.
Councillor Atkin.
For.
Councillor Buckler.
For.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Martin Burfoot.
4.
Councillor Sue Burfoot.
4.
Councillor Buttle.
4.
Councillor Chapman. Councillor Chapman left the meeting. Okay. Councillor Cruz.
4.
Councillor Donnelly.
4.
Councillor Elliott.
4.
Councillor Fitzherbert.
4.
Councillor Flitter.
4.
Councillor Froggatt.
4.
Councillor Finesse.
4.
Councillor Gamble.
4.
Councillor Hill.
4.
Councillor Hobson.
4.
Councillor Hughes.
4.
Councillor Lees.
4.
Councillor Morley. Tony Morley, sorry.
4.
Councillor Michelle Morley.
4.
Councillor O'Brien.
4.
Councillor Purdy.
4.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
4.
Councillor Salt.
4.
Councillor Shirley.
4.
Councillor Slack.
4.
Councillor Statham.
4.
Councillor Sutton.
4.
Councillor Swindell.
4.
Councillor Wayne.
4.
And Councillor Wakeman.
4.
James, I was here. James, it's David
Oh.
Chapman. I was here. I think you missed me.
Okay. Are you voting for Councillor Chapman or against or abstaining?
4.
Thank you. That's unanimous then, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know Councillor Cruz is leaving the meeting now. Okay, and just to say, Councillor Bright has given his apologies. If we put that on the record, please. Item 11 then, please. COVID-19 organisational roadmap and recovery. The Chief Executive, Paul Wilson, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Well, the report outlines for members the government's 4-step roadmap out of the COVID-19 lockdown, which members will be very familiar with from national media coverage, and it recommends a council approach in response to that particular roadmap. Step 2 of the government's roadmap is a milestone which we've recently passed on the 12th of April, and that saw the process for non-essential retail and services starting to reopen. However, there are a further 2 steps to the roadmap with critical dates on the 17th of May and the 21st of June, which will see further social restrictions being removed and also the reopening of the remainder of the economy. In response to that, the corporate leadership team feel that the District Council needs to set its own clear plan as to how the organisation will recover from the lockdown and will gradually emerge in order to resume normal service delivery in a normal state of business. Throughout the pandemic, the COVID-19 organisational risk assessments have been used to influence all of the key decisions taken by the corporate leadership team, and that will continue to be the case. The government guidance at the moment does remain that office workers who can work from home should continue to do so. And for the vast majority of town hall based employees, that certainly continues to be the case. And despite the challenges that the District Council has faced over the last 12 months, we have been very successful in maintaining the effective delivery of all of our frontline customer services. So corporate leadership team feel there is no overriding reason for a large scale imminent return to the town hall until such time that it is considered safe to do so. CLT also considers that it would be unwise to actually seek to return to the town hall prior to that 4th step in the roadmap of the 21st of June. And as such, it is proposed that the town hall should remain closed until at least this date and services continue to be delivered remotely. A decision on the timing of the town hall reopening and in-person meetings clearly must be informed by the circumstances that are likely to unfold nationally over the next 6 to 8 weeks in response to the various steps that are being taken. And it is considered that this situation should be kept under review. However, in the interests of maintaining a public service delivery and getting back to that situation of full delivery from the town hall, it is the anticipation that corporate leadership team will seek to reopen at the earliest possible date that it is considered safe to do so. But at this moment in time, that date is not yet known. And we are no different to any other district council or even the county council across the rest of Derbyshire. And those discussions are continuing across all authorities. So I have to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much. Could I just draw your attention, please, members, to those of you who are switched off. James has asked, could you keep your cameras on during the meeting so that he can be assured that you have been you are present and are able to vote on agenda items for you. Thank you. Councillor Tony Morley.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Paul, for a very comprehensive report and a very comprehensive walk through it just now. That was an extremely clear explanation of the roadmap out. On the basis of that, notwithstanding that members might want to have some questions on the detail, I'm going to move the report, and it's based on two things. One, the motion. One is a comment which Councillor Wayne made before about going over and above. He was referring to officers, but I think also taking into account the fact that our meetings now last twice as long as they used to do, some might say twice as long as they need to, I think we're doing our bit as well. So we've seen the district through the worst of the pandemic, I think, and I think the roadmap then shows a clear way out. So on that basis, I'm going to move that we accept the report as written. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Ratcliffe, please.
Yes, Chair, I'll second this the recommendations in this report. Comments, if you will allow me, Chair, to start off some debate rather than specific questions. I want to thank, obviously, Paul, from a personal perspective, never mind that of a corporate one. I think it's a very sensible, pragmatic and considerate approach. And I pick out two paragraphs in particular that I think are absolutely critical to what is being said. No overriding reason for a large-scale imminent return to the town hall. That's the first one. And the second one is that the CLT consider any wholesale return of staff or members to the town hall prior to the 21st of June would be premature. I agree entirely. And I'll go even further from a personal perspective to say that even the 21st of June for me would be too early. What I'd like to see though, Paul, if you'll allow me, perhaps to move to a form of rhetorical questioning, is that we, at some point, we have more discussion about setting up things for the future. This report very clearly is going to segue into the much more important one that follows this in agenda item 12. That's the most important one, not this one as such. But the consideration of setting up a hybrid working environment to allow for a flexible response involvement of members and officers in the future. It's very clear that there has been a move and an enthusiasm for home working. And it seems to me that that sort of hybrid environment where we used both technology and a return to the debating chambers is the ideal scenario. It allows for all sorts of circumstances that might otherwise debar member involvement in critical discussion and indeed in the democratic process. But as I say, I think Paul has very, very clearly set out what is this council's proposed approach, and I wholeheartedly support it. But we'll no doubt have some debate on exactly how we're going to use our time in the next item. But thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Councillor Michelle Morley, could I ask councillors please to turn on their screens, please? It's difficult enough chairing this meeting without that. Councillor Michelle Morley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Fully supportive of this report. I was going to second it, but it's already been seconded. Thank you. And also thank you to Paul for interpreting the national government's guidelines as well into our own organisation. I think it's very clear. I guess Mr. Hindsight will pop up from time to time over the next couple of months, which has got to be acceptable, because nobody would have ever thought this was going to be as dreadful and has lasted as long as it has. So thank you very much indeed, Mr. Wilson. Thank you very much, Chair.
Councillor Flitter.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I support the report. Apart from one comment that I do want to raise, but in the lead up to that question, I'd just like to thank Steve Capes for tonight. He's answered an awful lot of questions tonight. Despite the concerns of Councillor Purdy in his previous statement, I believe that Steve has answered all the questions in full and detailed. And I want to commend him for that, and to realise that what I'm about to say, I do support officers of this council. I think they are well able to do the job, and I support them wholeheartedly. What I would just like to ask about the report, and that is that if we are concerned about credibility and image of this council, that we are careful in using words that really have caused me some distress this week from very angry residents. And I'm referring to paragraph 8, 4 and 5, when we talk about workers working from home and the terminology of frontline staff. I think we've got to be very careful when mixing those two together, because obviously frontline is a term we use for our main services, but in the time of COVID, it means something very much different. And I do intend to contact Paul and let him know just the reason for me saying this. But if we could just think about the terminology and the phraseology that we use in reports with going out to the public that can get misread or misinterpreted, it does concern me. And I said I have had a lot of concern this week from very angry residents. But on the whole, I support everything that's been done. And I thank Paul for this report as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is an extremely good report too, so thank you very much, Paul. And I'd also like to thank, well, I guess it's the CLT, but it's all staff, because in comparison with many service sector industries that have during this pandemic, I believe our council has maintained its level of service at a very high level, including the level of what would be customer contact with members of the public, and as such, I think that is to be commended. And turning to Councillor Ratcliffe's point about moving forward from here, I note that we approved a new telephone system that would allow remote working to be used more easily, and for contact with council officers to be maintained irrespective of where they were working. So I feel that the council is already moving in that direction, and I think that is to be commended, because it will reduce the amount of movement around the county that is necessary, and allow much more efficient working. So I think this is all very, very positive. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Just to inform everyone, Councillor Gamble is not voting on this item because she's turned her screen off and has informed us she will not be voting. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to comment on the COVID-19, but first respond to Councillor Flitter, if I may. It might be of interest to you, Councillor Flitter, that on the DCN meetings and the LGA meetings, and particularly from ministers, they do refer to our council workers as frontline staff. I can understand where some of your residents are coming from, because obviously we treasure our NHS staff, but I wouldn't like us to get into an argument about grading. On the latest local engagement board meeting with the Director of Public Health, it re-emphasises what Paul has succinctly said to you all, and that is that we still need to be extremely careful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Well, it's been moved and seconded. I think we can go to the vote now, please. James, please.
Thank you, Chair. Beginning with Councillor Allison, please.
For.
Councillor Archer.
For.
Councillor Atkin.
For.
Councillor Buckler.
For.
Councillor Bull. Sorry, you there, Councillor Bull? Okay. Councillor Martin Burfoot.
For.
Councillor Sue Burfoot.
For.
Councillor Buttle.
For.
Councillor Chapman.
For.
Councillor Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Elliott.
For.
Councillor Fitzherbert.
For.
Councillor Flitter.
For.
Councillor Froggatt.
For.
Councillor Finesse.
For.
Councillor Hill.
For.
Councillor Hobson.
For.
Councillor Hughes.
For.
Councillor Lees.
For.
Councillor Tony Morley.
For.
Councillor Michelle Morley.
For.
Councillor O'Brien.
For.
Councillor Purdy.
For.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
For.
Councillor Salt.
For.
Councillor Shirley.
For.
Councillor Slack.
For.
Councillor Statham.
For.
Councillor Sutton.
For.
Councillor Swindell.
For.
Councillor Wayne.
For.
Councillor Wakeman.
For.
I'll come back for Councillor Bull.
Has she left the meeting or?
No, she's there. Are you on mute, Councillor Bull? Can you just confirm how you
turning
voted?
it on and off. I don't know what is happening. Yeah, I'm for. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 11, COVID, remote meetings, 12, I think we're on now, forgive me. 12, remote meetings, decision making. James.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, has already been referred to. I think it's rather regrettable I'm having to make this report to you this evening. The essence of the paper, as you will be aware from reading it, is to enable the Council to continue to discharge its functions and responsibilities after the 7th of May, when the regulations that permit you to meet virtually as a council and in committees cease to have effect. The report before you sets out the legal proceedings that are presently in motion, seeking a declaratory judgment to permit local authorities to continue to meet remotely or with hybrid arrangements when public health rules permit. That action was brought because the government indicated it was unable to identify parliamentary time before the sunset clause in the regulations took effect. The government have also recently announced a call for evidence in respect of the future of remote meetings beyond the 7th of May. And I've recommended to you this evening that the Council delegates authority to me in consultation with political group leaders to respond to that consultation. The action brought by the Association of Democratic Services Officers, Lawyers and Local Government and Hertfordshire County Council is also supported by the Local Government Association, the National Association of Local Councils, and as Councillor Purdy referred to earlier, the Secretary of State. So it seems like all the key players are supporting the action, but we are reliant on 2 judges at the High Court to consider this, and they heard the case yesterday, and a decision will be made before the 7th of May, recognising that there is a deadline that we're working to. Members, I'd like to make an additional recommendation to you this evening that this council makes a contribution of £300 from our external legal budget to support the costs incurred by ADSO, LLG and Hertfordshire County Council. All of local government stands to benefit from this action, and it would be a small yet significant gesture to show solidarity with these organisations who are seeking to enable you as members to continue to make decisions until it's safe to return to in-person meetings in council buildings. However, as we're not in that place yet and we don't have that judgment, you're being asked this evening to consider arrangements for the continued discharge of the council's functions and responsibilities until the tests in the government's roadmap are met and it becomes possible to meet in person again. And whilst in the previous report, we understand that the 21st of June is the key date, that is subject to the government's tests being met. So following consultation a couple of weeks ago with the 4 political group leaders, This report recommends that authority be delegated to officers to discharge the decision-making responsibility of the council and its committees in consultation with chairs and vice chairs, those political group leaders, and where relevant, with ward members. If you're minded to support this recommendation, I'm also seeking authority to make the necessary amendments to the Constitution to reflect what will hopefully be just a temporary measure. Although we do hope, of course, that there isn't any need for these measures to come into effect from the 7th of May if the court proceedings are successful. Finally, members, I'm making a recommendation to you this evening that you agree the membership of committees currently in operation, which you agreed at your annual meeting on the 22nd of July last year, for that to remain effective until a new political balance can be reported following the by-elections for Masson and Wirksworth wards on the 6th of May. Chair, I haven't got anything further to add to the report, and doubtless members will have questions. So
thank you very much. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, in moving the recommendations, I have to say that we are disappointed that we're at this stage. Us leaders throughout the country have been pressing the government on this for some time, but we are where we are, as they say, and one hopes that the judgment will come in our favour. It's interesting to note that the Secretary of State, as I said earlier on, Robert Jenrick, is actually backing the appeal. I entirely agree that we should submit £300 contribution to the organisations that have set in train this appeal. I think that's only fair, so I agree with that. We're a moving feast. I think we have to say that we're at the gateway to see what happens, A, with the appeal, and then Paul has agreed that us group leaders will be kept up to date weekly with what's happening with the situation. So it is a moving feast. It's not set in stone, and I think we have to see what comes around the corner. So move the recommendations, Chair.
Councillor Flitter.
Yes, Chair. Well, Councillor Purdy said the words that I was going to say, in that we are where we are. This is the best option that we can go forward with as a temporary measure. And the reason that I really support this is because we're including ward members on any difficult decisions within their wards. The one thing I would like to ask, and that's a matter of timing. I do not want to be, I believe that leaders lead by association with their members and not individually. And we do need time to discuss and we need time to come up with a view. So we don't want to be pushed with a question over the phone whether we support a particular form of action or not. We need a little bit of time to discuss with membership so that we get all the views and we get a council view. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Fitch, are you formally seconding the motion?
I will do, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I have Councillor Mike Ratcliffe.
Right, thank you, Chair. I was one of those that were in the Leaders Forum that discussed this. I felt a sense of unease then, and I feel even more uneasy now. I think, in a way, of course, both Steve and Gary have expressed thoughts about the pragmatic and sensible nature of this, as it were. But you can't escape from the fact that we're being pressured towards this. We're being pushed down a road that is actually taking away our involvement as members. I was taken by that phrase that someone used a moment ago, I think it was James possibly, that this report seeks to come up with a way to allow members to make the decision. But in fact, where the direction of travel is, if you'll allow me not to be too critical, is that the officers are making the decision and then looking for support to ratify it. I really want decision-making to be from the ground up, and then for officers to translate that into policy or strategy, etc. I just feel some of my demand.
You just turned yourself off, Mike. You've turned yourself off. Have you finished?
Can you hear me now? You can hear me now. Yeah, I was just.
You've turned yourself off again. I think you've touched the keyboard somewhere.
Ah, right. Okay. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I made the point in the previous one about hybrid working. Just to be clear, what I was actually trying to advocate there is that we move to a system whereby members could be in the debating chamber, but those who could not or were unable to attend could still participate through this virtual connection. That seems to me the way to move forward in the future. And it seems to me that the virtual meeting could still go ahead, as it were, in some form within this format.
Okay, can I ask James to answer those questions? I think he's sort of nodding an answer.
Yeah.
James.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Ratcliffe. I think if the court case is successful, that is exactly the model we'll be moving to. All local authorities will be moving to a hybrid model.
Yeah.
So I think your point is entirely well made, and I have nothing more to say on that.
Yeah, I am actually personally holding out every hope and expectation that good sense will prevail, and that the High Court judgment will be upheld, and we can continue in the way we have. But as I say, I won't vote against what Steve and Gary are proposing, but I am very uneasy. I am more than likely to abstain my vote.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Make that clear.
Thank you. Councillor Battle, I'm going to all the leaders first.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks. It's a funny one, isn't it? I'm kind of okay with it if it's only for a short time, because I trust the people, I trust the officers. I know we're generally reasonably straightforward and sensible. We're not totally crazed. So, it won't go too badly wrong. But there are a couple of things that are a problem. One is expecting officers to make decisions that, could blight their career. Like they have to choose where to put, I don't know, a gypsy and traveller site, for example, or whether or not to pass a planning application for the Gritstone Road. There's things where it could make things very difficult for people. So I'd like to be really clear that those aren't the sorts of questions that officers are going to be expected to make. And I'd quite like a cut-off point where we're all going to get together again in some way or form to say, yes, this is working or it's not. But I don't have any solutions or anything, and I expect that it's all going to be kind of pointless, because nobody in their right mind is going to just get rid of this level of democracy. Judges are reasonably sensible people, and they're unlikely to just say that's it, that's the end of democracy. So there we go, that's where I am, and I'm not quite sure.
Thank you. I'll just ask James for a response to that on the bigger items. James.
Yeah, the report does cover this, and officers would not be asked to make any decisions that they were not comfortable with making. So if we did have a major decision that needed to be taken, we would look to hold that decision back until a point where members could actually meet again. We are talking about a period of no more than 6 weeks, hopefully. So if there is anything major that comes up in that time, we would pause it and bring it to members as soon as practically possible. Even presently, officers are not required to use their delegated powers if they don't feel that they wish to. They can refer matters to committee as and when they consider it necessary to do so, or where it would be appropriate for members to make a decision rather than it going through delegated powers. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Waitman.
Yeah, I was only going to second it, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Slack.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. When this pandemic started, right at the very beginning, Zoom was in its infancy, very much so. But it's developed and developed, and it is a success, Zoom is. And it seems incredible to me that the government suddenly says we haven't had parliamentary time to debate this and move it forward. They knew it was coming. They knew the state was coming, and it should have been addressed. The government should have addressed it, and we shouldn't have been in this situation. But we hope that the High Court judges will have more sense than the government and get this right, and we won't be in this situation. I think it's unfair to officers to put them in this situation where they are making decisions which councillors are elected to make. Officers make recommendations to councillors, but we are the people that are elected to make them decisions. We are accountable to the public. So it's unfair to officers, it's unfair to councillors as well, for us to be in this position where we've no need to be in this position now because we've got Zoom. So hopefully the sense will prevail overall. So I will most likely be supporting this, but we're reluctantly. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien next.
Thank you, Chair. I'd say I share some of the unease expressed by Councillor Ratcliffe here. I accept the council's been placed in an almost mission impossible. She's talking about Stony Middleton down the road from us. We've been placed in a very difficult situation. I understand that alternate variations to the proposal were considered by the leaders advisory group, and I'm a little disappointed that those alternatives were not included in the proposals. I think these are issues for discussion and debate by all members rather than just by the leaders. So I'm a little disappointed. Maybe James could elaborate on the other options which were put forward for consideration. My main concern is that there is no scrutiny of decisions which are being taken by the executive rather than the elected members, and I agree with Councillor Slack. Residents expect elected members to take decisions, and if they're taken by the executive, I think there should be a process of scrutiny of those decisions, which there isn't. My other concern relates to the process by which it will be decided that certain items are contentious. Now, what's contentious to an officer or one member may not be contentious to another. So I do think all of us would benefit from understanding how that definition of contentious is going to be reached. If I can use an example, we are told that there will be an item coming forward, or was coming forward, to the Community Environment Committee in June on the review of the Public Spaces Protection Order. Now, it now appears that item would be both prepared by officers for consideration and a decision taken by officers. That to me does not seem to be an appropriate way of handling this type of issue, where it's clear that where the issue merits a debate rather than a decision by a handful of individuals and a decision.
Can I ask James to answer that just quickly? I think he's nodding.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll just pick up a couple of the points Councillor O'Brien made there in terms of no scrutiny of decisions and alternative options that were discussed in terms of the thinking behind the report. An alternative approach would have been to have committees meeting informally for members to effectively give a steer on reports before officers then actually took the formal decision. There are downsides to that in the sense that it wouldn't be a public meeting of committees, and any decision taken by officers wouldn't have to follow the recommendation from members. Therefore, the whole process could be seen to be ineffective and kind of pointless. If that decision-making process isn't public, then it doesn't work as well. In terms of scrutiny, you'll see within the report it's described that the way that this will work is that we will be taking decisions on a weekly basis, and we'll effectively publish an agenda where members of the public have 5 clear working days, as they do now for committee reports that you receive, to make representations on those. You as members will have the opportunity to make representations on those where you're not formally consulted as a group leader or chair and vice chair or a ward member where relevant. So we are trying to make the process that hopefully won't have to come into effect. Hopefully we will get a judgment, and hopefully it'll be a positive one before the 7th of May. But we're going to try and keep that as close as possible to a transparent way of working that you are used to and the public are used to. The difference will be that the decision notice that comes out, rather than the minutes of the meeting, will reflect the decision that officers will take. And clearly, I've worked with members for the best part of 20 years in a number of authorities. It's a very brave officer that seeks to take a decision where members are very clearly against the proposed course of action. So I think it would be unlikely that we'd find ourselves in a situation. But having worked closely with members for that length of time, as my colleagues have as well, we do have a sense of what a contentious matter is. It's a matter of significant public interest. The report that you referred to, Councillor O'Brien, the Public Spaces Protection Order, would be something in that category, and I would not expect colleagues to be seeking to take any decisions on that if we were in that period of time. We may well find that we have to look at the calendar of meetings so that we can front load some committee meetings for the end of June, beginning of July, if there is a lot of contentious business that needs to be transacted by members. But I am particularly confident that none of the arrangements I'm asking you to approve tonight will actually have to come into effect. I am very confident that the High Court will give us the outcome that we're looking for. But we will make this process as transparent as possible. And I will be happy to discuss this further with members outside the meeting and provide further information as required during the time if we are required to operate this way of working.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Suberth next.
Thank you, Chair. Well, like Councillor Slack has said, I'm very uneasy about this. I am having to put my faith in these High Court judges, who I hope have got more common sense than the government have got. I mean, if we think about what's happening in Parliament, they managed to have Zoom meetings. Some members, some MPs are in the chamber and some on Zoom. So why that couldn't be organised, I just can't imagine. I was going to talk a little bit about if ward members disagree about a decision with officers. All this puts officers in a difficult position, but I think James has answered that actually, because I wouldn't like to think that an officer had to make a decision against, if you like, the recommendation of the ward members, because that puts them in an impossible position. I mean, we are elected, we are prepared, and we have to accept that we will be criticised by the public, but that's not why an officer works for a local authority. You know, that's very unfair on them. But I would like to just ask about how this is going to affect planning. If a planning application isn't given a decision, how do we stand there with non-determination?
Okay, can I just say before I ask James we will be taking a break after this item, okay, folks? For those of you who are texting me, we will be taking a break after this item. James, on the planning question, please.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of planning, we have a fairly extensive scheme of delegation in place already. So the vast majority of planning matters would likely be dealt with under delegated powers anyway. I think for those matters that need to come to committee, and I'm not sure what that number looks like at the moment, that would need to be determined in that period, we will have to take a view. And if we do get into a situation where we're unable to determine an application, then I imagine we won't be the only local authority in this situation, and the government will be probably giving guidance on that. But I can come back further outside the meeting with a bit more information on that, if that'd be helpful, Councillor Burford.
Okay. Thank you very much. We've got Councillor Gamble now. Are you there?
Yeah, sorry, I was just slow muting myself. So just one comment on one thing that was said about the lack of transparency and the fact that you wouldn't be able to make these decisions if the public didn't see the meetings. Yet we do have items that exclude the public and the press. So we do decision making without the public actually seeing that process at the moment. So I'm not sure how that really negates the efficiency of decision making. The fact that and how is it more transparent taking members out of it completely than having a meeting where we give a steer, and at least then officers get to hear what members think. We're still like going apart saying members when it's going to be a ward member, but there's going to be a number of items that are cross ward where all ward members will be affected, and presumably on those decisions then they will be taken solely by officers. So just really wanted clarification.
Thank you, Chair. I wouldn't disagree. I don't think there's any ideal solution to this, and I think I want to be absolutely clear with members. I did not want to have to write this report tonight. I've been working closely with colleagues nationally for some time to avoid this situation, lobbying government for months on end, and I know councillors have as well. But I think the merits of the approach that's recommended, as opposed to having informal meetings of committees, there are potential arguments around predetermination, and actually has an officer who has the decision-making authority properly determined the matter clearly without any form of predetermination or direction from another body. And I think if we had committees meeting informally, there's potentially that argument that an officer hadn't acted independently in making the decision. There's a difference between consultation and direction. And whilst the idea would have been for members to make recommendations informally, because you are not legally allowed to meet as a committee, the view taken by the leaders group was that the delegation of authority as proposed in this report was consistent with the scheme of delegation in the way that officers exercise delegated powers in consultation with chairs, vice chairs, leaders and ward members where appropriate. So it's an extension of the way that we already work, rather than trying to introduce a model that tries to make up for the government's lack of action in actually trying to in retaining virtual meetings. So in all honesty, there's no ideal answer to this, and the recommendation before you this evening is based on trying to extend an arrangement that we currently have. Those of us who've worked with members for a long time don't want to see a situation where members aren't involved in decision making. You know, that's not acceptable to anybody. So I think in answer to your question, Councillor Gamble, you know, none of the recommendations would have been perfect this evening. It's not a great choice, but this was the view that the leaders group came to. Officers would have been happy to try and make any of the options work, but we have to make a decision, and the recommendation this evening was to go down that route. So I hope that goes some way to answering.
Thank you.
No, sorry, can I just so on the follow up
quickly, please.
Quickly, yes, all right. Can I? Who decides what is appropriate to go to a ward member?
I think if there are implications for a particular ward, that would be and that will be set out on the report that will be prepared. There will be a need to consult with the relevant ward members. So it will be the report author when they're setting out what the ward implications are, and for members to make that contribution at that stage.
Because I can have that clarification. That will be before the decision. It won't just be that members told after the decision's been made.
So all the reports will be published and sent to all members 5 clear working days as agendas are now. So knowing how diligent all members are, there's no chance of anything being missed, I'm sure.
Councillor Hughes, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this report. I was going to vote for it, and I've gotten a little bit more concerned during this debate, hearing what Councillor Slack, Burfoot and Councillor Radcliffe and others have said. I have a question first, and I'd like to make a number of points. So when the report says in consultation with, will there be a meeting between the people who would be consulted and the officers to whom the delegation is going to be given?
Thanks, Councillor Hughes. So the practice at the moment is that an email, in effect, would be sent round to members for their views to be recorded in writing. I think if there was a need to convene a meeting, having received those responses, then that could take place, and it would be down to the officer taking that decision to exercise their judgment around that. So my advice to any officer would be, if there's any concerns from members that need to be gone through in detail, then do have that discussion in person rather than trying to do it by email correspondence.
But in the normal situation would be that an email would be sent back. The leaders of the political group leaders would email their response back to the officer concerned, and a decision would be made thereafter. Is that correct?
That's correct, and the feedback would be noted within the decision notice that would be published on the website after that decision.
Right. Okay. So there wouldn't be the to and fro that happens with these meetings between the officer and the councillors who are consulted. I have 3 concerns. The first is Councillor Gamble's concern, which is one of visibility. And I cannot see that this is as visible as council meetings, and particularly the meetings we're having now with Zoom. The second is concerned with decisions where there's a marginal difference in opinion and the vote would be close. And we had in the planning meeting earlier on this week, there were a couple of decisions where the decision was close. One was 6 in favour and 6 against and 5 in favour, or the other way around, 6 in favour and 5 against. And that would be very difficult for an officer to take account of in the manner proposed here. And that by itself, for me, means that I cannot support this motion. And the third is precedence. We are told by scientists that there is likely to be a 3rd wave in the autumn. And we will have set up a method of making decisions that we are expecting to last for a period of, say, 6 weeks. But it's possible that it will happen, it will carry on, it will be reinstated in the autumn if there's another lockdown. And I'm very, very worried about precedents. So that is the third reason why I feel I cannot support this motion. And I'm sorry to have to say that, because I understand that it is a very difficult one, but in this respect, I'm going to vote against.
Okay, just to remind you, we will be having a break after this, and I'm just wondering if we'll finish with Councillor Purdy, please, who moved the item.
Thank you, Chair. I understand and share all your concerns, councillors, and that's something, as I say, we've pressed the government on through the DCM meetings this past few months. Goodness knows why they've left us in the lurch. They've said very strongly that there's not enough parliamentary time. We pushed for an amendment, but nonetheless, we are where we are. I want to assure members that first and foremost, we've already agreed that there will be no decision making on such planning applications as Brixton Road or any other contentious or major issue. We will not do that. You have that assurance. We also discussed the fact that, and I actually put forward that the consultation should be with group leaders. And I do take Councillor Flitter's point that it won't be a phone call. We need to have time to discuss it with our own group, which is what I did when I went to that decision making with James. So that needs to be done. Of course it does. And so our officers are listening, and Paul's listening, of course, so that there is need for transparency. I'm assured by James that that will be there as best can be in the circumstances. We did agree that this is, out of the options, the most sensible and most pragmatic way forward. It's not the best way forward, it's the most sensible and pragmatic for the moment. But we did also say, and I do assure members, that we keep it under constant weekly review. It's a temporary period, and if it moves towards that there is either something not working with the system or there's arguments strong enough to warrant going to informal meetings, then we will visit that. I would hope that 21st of April judgment will come in our favour. And there's another reason for this hybrid meeting system, and that's the long-term effect on the green energy climate debate. We've got a golden opportunity now to reinvent meetings. There's no need for members to have to travel to the town hall from outlying districts. There's no point. Why waste the petrol? We could have hybrid meetings. And I think that's another very strong reason why government will be pushed into the law to allow hybrid meetings. So be assured, members, we're going to do it as transparent as we can. There'll be perfect consultation with all the group leaders. If there's any objection, we'll raise it. We'll keep you all informed. And we're looking at it weekly very closely. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded. We'll put it to the vote now, please, James.
Thank you, Chair. So beginning with Councillor Allison, please.
Abstain.
Councillor Archer.
For.
Councillor Atkin.
For.
Councillor Buckler.
Abstain.
Sorry, was that abstain?
Yes, abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Martin Burfoot.
Abstain.
Councillor Sue Burfoot.
Abstain.
Councillor Buttle.
For.
Councillor Chapman.
For.
Councillor Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Elliott.
For.
Councillor Fitzherbert.
For.
Councillor Flitter.
For.
Councillor Froggatt.
For.
Councillor Finesse.
For.
Councillor Gamble.
Against.
Councillor Hill.
For.
Councillor Hobson.
For.
Councillor Hughes.
Against.
Councillor Lees.
For.
Councillor Tony Morley.
For.
Councillor Michelle Morley.
For.
Councillor O'Brien.
Against.
Councillor Purdy.
For.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
In all good conscience, I abstain.
Councillor Salt.
For.
Councillor Shirley.
For.
Councillor Slack.
Against.
Councillor Statham.
For.
Councillor Sutton.
For.
Councillor Swindell.
For.
Councillor Wayne.
For.
And Councillor Wakeman.
For.
That's carried, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can I have a mover to extend beyond 8:30, please? Thank you, Councillor Swindell, seconded by Councillor Michelle Morley. Right, so we can, show of hands, please. So if we take 10 minutes.
Right, Josh, are you having tea?
8:40, 8:40. We've returned at 8:40, please, Jim. 8:40. Thank you. 40, is everybody back? I've just been giving a big Derbyshire Dales welcome to some visitors. So, hopefully you can hear. We are now back. We have 41 participants. We are back on
four Conservatives and one from each of the other groups. So you're setting up a group where the Conservative group can outvote the other ones. Any particular reason for doing that? It's going to be to look at our constitution, or is it going to be looking at any at the governance model at all? Can I be reassured that it is
council to undertake health checks of the constitution and recommend any of the proposed changes to the constitution arising from the above to council for approval. So if there is a feeling from members that they want to look at a model of governance, then this would be the group to do that. But I suspect before that group could do that, it would have to come through this council to make any decision to commence any process around a governance model examination. In terms of the composition of the group, I've recommended that it be established on a cross-party basis, but it should be politically balanced as well. In the short time that I've been with this authority, we've lost a lot of time haggling around the seat entitlement and political balance of the council. And I think it's really important that this group actually is able to make some firm recommendations through to council that will be carried through the council. So in my experience of these groups in other authorities, I'm not coming at it blindly or saying it should operate on this basis because of the circumstances of Derbyshire Dales. This is good practice that I've worked to in other authorities, and that's why I've recommended it. Thank you.
Can I just do a follow up on the thing? So have you been approached by anybody to use this as an opportunity to look at the governance model?
No, no one's asked me for the Constitution Working Group to look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Flitter.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm in full support of this. I think with James in the role that he is now, has taken a look at this and found that one or two changes need to be made. I mean, I shall be interested to hear what he spotted. But we do have to remain legal. We do have to remain functional and practical, and we should take his advice on board. So I'm fully in support of this document tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien. Mute, please.
This is a question. There's a question for James here. The proposal is that this is a 7-member group on a cross-party basis. I think I'd like an explanation as precisely what that means. Without going into discussions of the argument, shall I say, that we got into before Christmas, the council is now under no overall control, so no one party has control of the council. Therefore, I'd expect the makeup of this working group to reflect the fact that no party has overall control. Can you confirm that will be the case? You know, being specific, therefore, that there will not be 4 Conservative members of the group and 3 non-Conservative members, because that would then work on the basis that there is an overall control. So can we have an assurance or can have an explanation as to precisely what is meant by cross-party representation, and that the decision-making of the ability of this recommendation-making ability of this group will reflect the fact that there is no overall control in the council?
Thank you. James, please. Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. You'll recall at your last council meeting in March that you noted that the political balance of the council had changed with the formation of a Conservative and Councillor Bright and Councillor Elliott group, which does have the majority of seats on the council. So, and most people reading that would have interpreted it in that way. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Battle. Neil?
Yes, that's pretty much what I was going to ask, because I'm actually here as a Green, and there are 3 independent groups as well, 3 independent members who hang out with us. And you know, like, we aren't a party. We're kind of a faction. And I don't know, maybe Graham and Richard are actually in our faction, even though they may well be working with the Conservatives at the moment. So the whole thing about cross-party wasn't really working for me. So yeah, let's amend that, thanks.
Okay, I've got Councillor Raw.
Evening, sorry I was late to the meeting. Yeah, it was just a general comment really about this and other groups that get set up. We do have a gender imbalance at a higher level within the council, and it's just an ask that we do have a bit of gender equality on these groups that are set up, and if that can be considered in their makeup to ensure that there's a diverse group and it's not just all men. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And Councillor Purdy, I've got.
Thank you, Chair. James has succinctly covered the points I wish to raise, and that is we are the lead group and therefore it should be politically proportionate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Can we go to the vote, please, ladies and gentlemen? James.
Thank you, Chair. So we begin with Councillor Allison, please.
Abstain.
Councillor Archer.
For.
Councillor Atkin.
For.
Councillor Buckler.
For.
Councillor Bull.
For.
Councillor Martin Burfoot.
For.
Councillor Sue Burfoot.
For.
Councillor Buttle.
For.
Councillor Chapman.
For.
Councillor Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Elliott.
For.
Councillor Fitzherbert.
For.
Councillor Flitter.
For.
Councillor Froggatt.
For.
Councillor Finesse.
For.
Councillor Gamble.
Abstain.
Councillor Hill.
For.
Councillor Hobson.
For.
Councillor Hughes.
For.
Councillor Lees.
For.
Councillor Tony Morley.
For.
Councillor Michelle Morley.
For.
Councillor O'Brien.
For.
Councillor Purdy.
For.
Councillor Raw.
Councillor Raw. Move on and we'll come back.
Okay, Councillor Salt.
For.
Councillor Shirley.
For.
Councillor Slack.
For.
Councillor Statham.
For.
Councillor Sutton.
For.
Councillor Swindell.
For.
Councillor Wayne.
For.
And Councillor Wakeman.
For.
Councillor Raw.
Yeah.
Abstain. Thank you.
Thank you. That's carried, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay,
Chair, point of order, please.
Yeah.
Can I just ask that the changing in the wording from cross-party to cross-political group is noted in the minutes?
I think James has already accepted that.
Well,
yeah.
I know, but I'm asking if it's going to be noted in the minutes.
Yeah.
It will be, Chair.
Thank you
It will
very
be.
much.
Thank you. Right, so we now have a bit of extra business that I hope you've all read from the thing. We have to exclude the press and public. I don't know how many people we've got left, but we need a motion on the floor to exclude the press and public participation here. Can I have a mover, please?
Yeah, I'll move the motion to.
Thank you,
exclude
Councillor
the
Atkins.
public and press.
Seconded, Councillor Statham. Show of hands, please, for that, because there's sensitive information. Any against? I can't see any against. So that is